Good afternoon. My name is Jenny, geophysicist by background. I'm from Edmonton originally. I moved to Calgary in the year 2000. I spent over 20 years developing and managing oil and gas assets across the Western Canadian Sedimentary Basin. I remember being excited to identify and execute production opportunities I put forward. I was always bothered by the drilled and abandoned, but it wasn't until I joined Blackshire in 2012 that I started to think about liability. That is the cost to return our wells, facilities, pipelines, and access ways to their natural state. At Blackshire, I was involved in the sale of mature assets. During the process, I started to appreciate the long-term costs of the decisions I made as a geoscientist. Examples being site selection and size leading to high surface rentals and high disturbance. Challenging directional plans that led to production issues and methane leaks. And lost revenue of assets when not considering the longevity of production tie-in decisions. From 2014 to 2018, I reviewed assets for purchase. That analysis was all liability-based as the prices fell out in late 2014. The question was always, will the revenue exceed the cost to close the assets? And most of the assets we reviewed at sub $50 WTI, we could not afford the risk of purchase. I realized then that I wanted to solve this problem. In early 2020, with the emergence of COVID-19, I was given the privilege of contributing to the liability management strategy at Canadian Natural. My goal is to influence the legacy of our industry for everyone involved. I delivered these words with some actionable solutions to my geoscience peers on June 21st, 2022. The message was the need for the geoscientists like me to take a leadership role in the closure of oil and gas sites to meet climate objectives. The next morning, I was called into a boardroom that I didn't know existed to face 4 executives and receive a performance improvement plan. I was told I do not promptly communicate the day after giving a presentation to my peers. I was told I was not prepared and I was not preparing leadership. And that my goals were not aligned with the organization. And finally, that I was combative. I disagreed with their assertions. Aside from my being combative, you bet I was. And I asked what would happen if I disagreed with this. I was promptly told this is non-negotiable. In that meeting, I had the opportunity to express 2 things I'm proud of. Number 1, these executives are in an abusive relationship and can't see outside themselves. I am not the problem. Liability is the problem. I have solutions to that problem, and they didn't even want to hear them. I pled constructive dismissal and left the organization and the industry the next day. My career that was founded on being a responsible life cycle manager of energy and landscapes did not exist, and it still does not exist today. The only thing I had to go on before leaving was that I had reconnected with a friend and collaborator. Amy and I would have deep discussions about religion and politics. Since I was available, Amy asked if I would consider running for the Alberta Party in the 2023 election. I was both flattered and repulsed at first, and I said I would need time to think about it. So I began, as I always do when faced with reset, is by figuring out what do I care about. So serendipitously, I found Ibram Kendi's How to Be Anti-Racist podcast one morning. In it, Ibram was interviewing Sarah McGee about her new book, The Sum of Us. Heather ran an economic research firm that worked for the US government to analyze the cost benefits of policies. Her company would put forward recommendations that increased equality and saved money. Yet over and over again, elected officials from either side of the aisle would not make beneficial changes. The book explains how segregation has not ended. It shows up in zoning. It shows up in private health and education, and it shows up in environmental policy. I was reminded of the racism and prejudice I heard and saw in the industry, how sites on Indigenous lands were considered more costly because communities wanted to participate. The Sum of Us explains changes need to happen within government. So I set to participate. My message was simple. This province runs on a balanced budget model. It does not intake the input or impacts of the public or the environment, and that people, our resources, water, air, land, and biodiversity are suffering. The solution, in my view, is to center our economy on restoring the environment and community, honoring the laws of the land by way of a citizens and stewards assembly. That is honoring the stewardship practices, including Indigenous and caregiver knowledge at front and center, and that all ministries need to take responsibility. So I door knocked on about 8,000 doors, and I can tell you that 90% of our population is too busy. I had a conversation with Jennifer Winus, one of our city councillors, and she asked me if I was supported by the party. No, I was made to feel like an independent. Out of that work, though, I did find community. It's here. I've connected with the Polluter Pay Federation, a group of people dedicated to supporting land rights for both Indigenous and landowners. And I am working on the groundswell, and that's what this is today. So what have I learned since I left the industry? Climate science is not in dispute, as Gary said. I can tell you that the propaganda works. I had signs on my door saying how much I love Canadian energy. And as much as I knew it was wrong, I saw it every day. And it's really hard to see past that. Methane leaks are well understood and hidden, as Gary said. Since 2011, there was a Cornell study that told us this, and we've moved in the wrong direction because of that. I knew this in the industry, and I think this is part of why I was gone, which is net zero is oil industry propaganda. It's a distraction from liability and land use. And I was told that we didn't understand the amount of liability that we had out in the land. But actually, it turns out we've known since 2018 that the number isn't $60 billion, it's $260 billion. I've learned that the AER is designed for industry, and that claims to improve regulations that I was involved in through CAP are meaningless. They are designed to promote the security of big oil. There is no counter lobby to oil and gas, only an extremely strong wall of lobbying for them. We have captured towns, municipal governments, county governments, provincial governments, federal governments, and even the design of nonprofits make it very difficult for us to get headway against these forces. As I said, the public and the problem are not being represented in the decision-making processes, and our development and infrastructure efforts are breaking down. So there is an opportunity for us to finally start to get the changes that we need because of this. So what grounds me? So I'm surrounded by leaders, and what I've discovered from Claire Kratz, as many of you likely know, is that leadership is the secret to this. We don't need to all be climate scientists. We just need to care, and we just need to get ourselves out there. The solutions are clear and simple. We have a $260 billion cleanup plus renewable economy in wait in this province. The feel-good jobs that will come out of that work, from climate scientists to people on the ground just planting trees or grasslands for that matter, it's going to be a phenomenal thing once we get started. I will know that we are being successful when we are closing down sites to meet the Paris Agreement, when we are giving back to communities and to our land, when Indigenous knowledge keepers are teaching us, when leadership is honored, not power or money, and when the public is being represented in all decision-making processes. And finally, that water is life, and it needs to be cherished, respected, and restored. This is our future. Thank you. Thank you very much for letting me speak today. It's been an honor to be in community with all of you. Thank you.